while we make sure this is working correctly. There's a lot of technology here tonight. No. Because somebody got upset on Facebook that we had a picture of yoga. What I would hate to see. All right. All right. So welcome. All right, welcome. We are going to talk tonight about kind of what's happening with Wellspring as we move forward and what that means for how we're structured. Okay? So, but I want you to open up. I want you to think about something, and I'll ask you to share a little bit. Okay? We already prayed for the food, so that's good enough. Okay? So we'll pray about this too. Okay? God, we're grateful that you continue to bless us as your people. We pray, Holy Father, that you would be among us, that you would open up our hearts and our minds to see what you are showing us about where we are headed. Till up the soil of our souls that we might be fresh, fertile ground for the planting of the possibilities that you have for us. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Cool. So think back, okay? In your life, what changed for you when you went from middle school to high school? What things changed for you when you went from middle school to high school? If you can think of anything.
You mean the first year or like throughout high school?
Like from 8th to 9th grade, what was different? So like for me...
Class structure.
Okay, go ahead. Talk about class structure.
Well, even in the 8th grade, I think I still remembered it was less focused on, I guess you were more focused on individual subjects in high school.
Yeah.
For me than in 8th grade. It's pretty much everybody took standard courses still.
Okay, so there's like more electives and stuff. Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
You could sleep in class.
Ah.
Teachers didn't wake you up.
This is what I remember. In high school was the first time I started sleeping in class. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Uh-huh.
My junior high principal to my dad is my high school.
Oh, okay, so that changed. All right, perfect. Great.
You feel a little lost because it's so big.
Exactly. Typically, your high school is bigger than your middle school, right? So you feel a little lost. Absolutely. Well, so here's the deal, okay? What happens when we go from middle school to high school is things change. We have to adjust to a new structure, a new format, like kind of new expectations. And that's one of the things we're going through here at Wellspring right now. So we could deal with particular metrics, but I think, and I've thought a couple of times that we were crossing a metric barrier, like in worship attendance numbers, which is how most people measure this sort of thing. But really, I think lately, over the last few months, I've just seen us operating differently and kind of feel a different structure. And so I thought it was appropriate to have this conversation now. So if you talk about like, how is the culture of Wellspring changing? And the people who study this sort of thing say there are certain aspects of church culture that you don't really get to set. They're just set by like how big you are, okay? How many people are coming around and the character of the things you're doing. So what's changing about our culture? So there's like the first size of church is 0 to 40, and we might call it like house church size, okay? And what I'm thinking is we're transitioning out of that size into the next one, which is like small, they call it small church size, is 40 to 200, okay, in worship attendance on a weekend. And so here's what the data says, or the people who study this kind of thing say. They say when a house church gets to 40 plus people, they are faced with a choice. They can do one of two things. They can either launch another house church and send some people away, so there's 2 house churches, okay? We have chosen a model that doesn't really make that a possibility at this stage. Or they can grow into a new culture that supports the new size, okay? They can grow into a new culture that supports the new size. And here's the thing. If you don't do one of these two, if you just dig in your heels and say, we're going to keep everything the same, if you just say, we're going to keep everything the same, then the experts say, if no change is made or accommodated, the church will become ingrown and stagnant, stifling, and even legalistic. So what happens is, if we dig in our heels and go, we're not going to change, then like we end up not really growing or bringing in new ideas or new kinds of people, or we end up being really protective over what kind of church we are, and we go, no, we can't let things change. We have to keep them the way that they are, see? So this is the stifling or legalistic, like kind of trying to be overbearing about the shape and culture of the church. And so we're going to talk tonight about some ways that we can adjust to be a different kind of church moving forward. But I want to be clear about something first, okay? First of all, the who we are will not change. So some forms and some expressions and some structure might change, but the who we are will not change. So what I'm about to share is a reminder of things you might already know about who we are, and I just want to be clear that like this stuff is the stuff that is timeless, okay? Timeless. So for instance, our mission, hopefully many of you are aware of this now, our mission is to give people a place to call home and to empower them for a life on mission. So that means that we want to welcome people in and make them feel comfortable. So often what I say when we welcome guests on Sunday morning is there's coffee over there, there's food in the kitchen, the bathrooms are in the back, make yourself at home, right? So we want to make people feel like Wellspring is a place to call home. It's a church that feels like home. And then we want to empower people to live a life on mission. This means that they're seeking to bless their community. They're seeking to connect with God in all environments. They're seeking to receive the love of God and give it away, learn and share the Word of God. And so they're living their whole life as sent missionaries. So people who are a part of Wellspring Church should feel at home here, and they should feel that they are sent as missionaries. And that will not change. That is still what we do. Okay? That's still what we do. And then we have 4 core values, and these are like why we do what we do, or they're the character of what we do. They're kind of the character of what we do. So one of them is we value people, not prospects. Okay? People, not prospects. So this means we treat people as individuals. Folks come in, they should feel seen, heard, and known. They should understand that we don't just see them as an opportunity to add to our numbers, but we see them as a person that God loves, that He has a unique dream for, and we are here to help them figure out what it means to be a part of community and live on mission. Okay? So we value people, not prospects. We value commitment, not convenience. So we build relationships that last. Sometimes it's hard to build deep relationships among people, to live life alongside of each other, to figure out how to love each other well, but we're committed to that process. It's not just about creating environments that are easy to connect in so we can check the box that we participated in church. It's about figuring out how to walk life on life together. So it's commitment, not convenience, because we build relationships that last. The next one is progress, not perfection. So we believe that God is making us better every day. And that means that we will never have arrived, but God is always making us better tomorrow than we are today. And so we're not looking for people to have it figured out. We're not trying to tell people that they need to get finished. We're just saying, hey, can you walk into every environment ready for the Holy Spirit to change you more and more into the likeness of Jesus? And so that's progress, not perfection. Then the last one is kingdom, not cookie cutter. Okay? Kingdom, not cookie cutter, because we believe that God is moving in new ways. So we don't try to do the same thing the same way every time. We try to leave room for the Spirit of God to do something different than we might expect. Okay? And so we're kingdom, not cookie cutter. So those things, like our mission and our values and and a couple other pieces we're not talking about tonight, will not change. Okay? They will not change. So we're going to talk about some forms and structures that might be different as we turn into a different kind of culture, different kind of church, but those things will not change. And really, this is where it's helpful to kind of talk about understanding, if you want to think about how you connect at Wellspring. If we talk about a church's identity, okay, a lot of people connect with the expression of the church identity, okay? The expression of the church, which we'll call the lower room identity, okay? So that's made up of 4 pieces. One is the people, okay? So folks connect with at a church like the other people that are there, the relationships they build, the friends they make, and they say, that's my church, the other people that are there. And you may have actually seen the negative side of this, which is like there's somebody who's really connected to a church, but once 1 or 2 sets of their friends leaves, they're out. They say, that's not my church anymore. The people are gone. So it's not the same as it was before because they've connected with the people more than anything else. And then there's also the personality, okay? And this is like the personality of a leader. So some people connect with the church really well. They really say, this is my church because they like the person who stands up front on Sunday. or the personality that has shaped the church. And if that pastor leaves or that leader leaves, they might say, I'm not sure that's the church for me anymore because no longer is that personality there. Okay. The other one is programs. Okay. And so this is like, I really like their small groups. I really like their men's group, their women's group. I really like the way they do Bible study. I really like whatever. Like the way that the church does ministry, people connect with that. Okay? Or I really like the music they have on Sunday, or I really like whatever. The programs, the functions, the execution of the church, they connect with that the most. The last one is the place. And I heard a story from a guy, he went to a really big church, and he said, like, one time I was driving to church, and I was going for my parking spot, the place that I always park, and I like to back in. He said I was going to back into my parking spot. I was getting ready, but then somebody else was parked in my spot. He's like, oh my gosh, this is awful, right? So, okay, I find a different spot, and then he goes in, he walks through the lobby, and he's going into the auditorium where they do worship, and he said, I'm walking for my aisle, so I can go down my aisle and turn left into my seat. And he said, but then I realized that they've moved the chairs, and my aisle's gone. And he goes, oh my gosh, now how am I going to find my seat? I had my seat that was on the aisle, right over here on the left, so I could see the preacher real good, but if I needed to go to the bathroom, I could still get out, and I got to get out at the end of the service because there's so many people I'm going to get blocked in, right? So he was connected with the place, the way that he connected with the building, the space, the seat, whatever. And so when that stuff changed on him, it was hard to connect. Now, here's what's important to remember as we talk about transition, okay, is these things are not bad, okay? These things are not bad to connect with or get excited about. In fact, these are God's provision for the church. Okay? Provision. These are God's provision for the church. These are the things that God gives us so that we can do the ministry to which He's called us. The problem is when they replace what the church is really about. Okay? So here we go. This up here is where identity actually lies. Okay? Stuff like the mission and the values we talked about, okay, that I would summarize as like a frame. But it's a frame we look through to understand who we are. So up here is the identity of the church. That's God's vision for who we are. This is the upper room, okay. This is the lower room. And so the forms that we take should always be in service to the vision that God has given us for who He wants us to be. The expressions, the provision for God's church, should always be an expression of God's vision for who we're called to be. So the challenge, particularly for leaders, who most of you in this room are, right, is to make sure that people see how these things are a reflection of our identity. Okay? So we need to be able to connect back to God's vision for the church, the place to call home, life on mission, the people, not prospects, right? The commitment, not convenience, the progress, not perfection, the kingdom, not cookie cutter. We need to be able to show people how these things, the place we have, the programs we run, the people, the leadership, all of that is an expression of who we are. Okay? So in this house that is God's church, that has this lower room and upper room, what we can do is make sure that the way that we talk about church, okay, the language we use, the expressions we have, always point back to the vision of the church. So that's why things like mission and values can be really important. Before I roll on, any questions or thoughts about that? Does that make sense to you? Is that something that, did any of those illustrations I was giving connect with you? Are there any of those that you think you're particularly prone to gravitate toward? Which one is the toughest one for you? You would say, I'm most prone to think of the church just as the place or just as the people.
I would say people.
People? Okay.
Probably the easiest one to go for.
Yeah, because it's the people you connect with, the friends you make, the relationships you have. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd say personality.
Okay, the leadership and the character. Yeah, absolutely. Great. Cool. Yeah, so this is where, like, what I'm anticipating is, that for us as we grow, it may be one of these things, and it may be something else that's a tweak of one of those, that you start to go like, hey, that thing isn't the way it used to be. Or maybe if the people is your thing, I used to always be able to connect with everybody on Sunday. now there's over 50 people. I can't connect with the people. Now I don't connect with the people the way I used to. Is that still my church? Well, yes. Because remember, the reason you like the people is because they're gathered around the mission. The reason you like the programs is because they're an expression of what we're called to do. And so as long as we can make sure that these things always reflect this, there should always be a way to connect with what God is doing among us. Okay? Yeah?
Is it what we see and like, or is this like the gateway or the magnet that people that are maybe visiting for the first time see or hear
Right.
or get? Is that?
It's both. It's both. So really it's like these are the tangible aspects of church. This is more ethereal. And but this is what drives us. So a place to call home and a life on mission is the thing, right? I think, a lot of folks who've come around lately really gravitate toward people, not prospects, and progress, not perfection. And I think we've gotten a few people lately who are like, I'm really glad that I can come here and feel like I can come as I am, right? And so what they might say, though, is, oh, no, if the worship environment gets a little more rigid because there's more people and we need to be a little more programmed, it might not feel the same way it did when they came in. So if we don't help them to say, yeah, it feels really laid back here, that's an expression of progress, not perfection, right? That's an expression of that. But if it starts to get more rigid and they don't realize that what they're excited about is progress, not perfection, and they think they're just excited about a laid-back worship environment, then we're doing them a disservice, and they'll just attach to this, and they might not attach to the mission of the church any longer. And I think that's true for all of us, right? And that was the thing for me lately, like recognizing that it was harder to connect with the people on Sunday morning. That was me in November and December. I was having a hard time, and I had to adjust to that, to where now, like, yesterday there were 4 or 5 people I didn't get to talk to that normally I would have wanted to, and I just had to be like, oh, okay, that's just how it is now. But it doesn't mean that we're not committed to each other in the same kind of way. Thoughts? Any other thoughts? Questions?
It makes sense. As you get bigger, I mean, you're not going to be able to talk to everybody every time.
Right.
So I think as long as you make a concerted effort to look for them every once in a while,
Yeah.
3 or 4 weeks at least, and say something.
Right.
So, especially with new folks that are walking in, I think the provision is what they're going to be seeing first.
Right.
Obviously. Can you talk a little bit about the language that we can use
Yeah.
out here, not so much from up front,
Right.
to get them to see the identity and the vision that
I think it really is like even some of those values I rattled off, being able to use those in everyday conversation. So being like, yeah, the thing I love about our church is that it's kingdom, not cookie cutter. That means that things never happen the same way twice, because we believe that God's always doing something, right? And it doesn't have to sound like a speech. So like, or I really like that I can come as I am, because like we're about progress, not perfection, right? And the thing about using language like that that's like short and alliteration is it sticks with people, and that's what kind of starts to shape culture, when we can start to use the same kind of language. But really, like, yeah, if we're all talking about come as you are, we're open to the Spirit.
As long as it's explained, though, right?
Yes.
'Cause that's like what I find is like, especially with newcomers, you can't, if you say that to them,
Yeah.
it's foreign language.
Exactly. So we're not trying to create insider outsider language, but what we're trying to do is go, okay, team, here's how we can talk about church, right? Yeah. So for you, it's a shorthand, so you're not going, well, I like when we did that movie in the park, and you're using examples rather than like, and then now again, you're talking about programs instead of talking about who we are, right? Cool. That's more discussion than I had anticipated, but good. Okay. I forgot that I've given this talk 30 times now, and so it's new to all of you, right? So great. Okay. So here's the deal. So same vision, new forms, right? Same vision, possibly new forms. Okay. So specifically, explicitly tonight, I want to talk about like the shape, the structure of how we connect and lead. okay? How we connect and lead. So this has been the shape of our church so far, okay? So this is a diagram we use to talk about the church penetrating culture with the mission of God. So this cone is going into the world with the love of God, the gospel, right, and sharing. And so there's a people marching together. We talk about how here over the next couple of years we want to go from a family to a tribe. We're going to be a tribe that's marching to the rhythms of Live, Love, Learn across West Volusia. And so I'm picturing that's our tribe. That dotted line is the circle of people who are kind of hanging out in our orbit, and they're not sure if they're connecting or not, but we're giving opportunities for them to come along on the journey. Okay, come along on the journey. So far, this has been our structure, where I would say myself and Aaron have been the big circle. Okay? And so we're kind of going, hey, come on, guys. Come along on this journey of mission into West Volusia. And then there's several of you. There's actually 44 of those dots. So, right? So about, I counted. I was like, this doesn't have to be perfect. And then I was like, ooh, it could be though, right? Okay. So there's 44 of those dots, and really it's like, if anybody needs to know, hey, where are we going? If anybody needs to know, hey, what's coming next? If anybody needs to know, hey, can I get some help over here? If anybody says, hey, clear this up for me, everybody's coming to that one big circle. Okay? That's the way it's been, sort of. And that's because when we started, there weren't 44 dots. There were like 12. Okay? And we can handle that. Right? We can handle that. But now we're getting to where this is getting a bit cumbersome, particularly for us. Okay? So, and in fact, it's not the best way to mobilize people in the mission with like one set of key leaders. Okay? So the question is, how should we organize for this mission we find ourselves on? If we're going to carry into West Volusia the promise of God, the gospel of Jesus Christ that sets people free to live life on mission, and we're going to empower people to live their lives on mission, we're going to mobilize them as missionaries in their everyday life, how should we structure for that? Well, there's precedent in the Bible, conveniently. Okay? So in Exodus chapter 18, Moses is leading the Israelites through the desert. And there's Moses, and then like, depending on what you believe, the Bible, there's like 1 million people, okay? And they have problems, and they have disputes, and they need to settle them. And so what's happening is Moses sets up in a tent, hopefully sits on a chair or something, and people line up all day and come through and be like, he stole my cow, or whatever, like he took my manna, and he's settling disputes all day. So he's like telling them what to do, helping them figure it out, right? One guy, and they're just parading through. And his father-in-law, Jethro, comes into town. I go to my father-in-law for much wisdom as well, so I have a Jethro. But his father-in-law comes into town, comes to visit, and he sees this, and he goes, Moses, this is a problem. He says, you're sitting here all day settling disputes. You can't lead the people. And he says this. He says, you need rulers of tens, rulers of 50s, rulers of hundreds, and rulers of thousands. So he breaks it down into these ratios where he goes, here's the deal. You lead 10 people, and they each lead 5 people, and they each lead 10 people, and then you're leading everybody, right? So this isn't just like a corporate management structure. It's actually like a biblical model for leadership. To say these people lead these people, then those people lead these people, and in that way everybody is led, okay? So it ends up looking a little bit more like this, okay? Where, and this is actually kind of what our structure is going to look like, and I fiddle with it a lot to try to get the numbers close to what they actually are right now, okay? Because I like numbers and diagrams and things. So now what we're talking about is, okay, so if our mission is give people a place to call home and empower them for a life on mission, then we should have some people making sure we're doing those things, right? Place to call home, life on mission. So what we have here are myself and Aaron still as the blue circle, okay? The blue circle kind of hopefully leading the charge into the breach, right? Or whatever that's the breach, right? And then the 2 squares would be purple would be a welcome home leader, and red would be a life on mission leader, okay? And then the diamonds are coordinators, welcome home coordinators and life on mission coordinators. And then the dots are members or volunteers who are helping to do the stuff, okay? So what are these things? Did I just make up these words? Yes. Okay. But here's the deal. A coordinator is somebody who serves the faith family by equipping members, so folks who are committed, by equipping members to execute the functions of the family, so like get stuff done, and grow in their capacity to center their lives on Jesus. So here's the deal. Leadership at Wellspring doesn't just mean getting something done. It means helping to further the mission in the lives of the members. So if we are giving people a place to call home and empower them for life on mission, that means everybody in a leadership role has the responsibility to the people in their immediate sphere of influence, get them to feel at home and live on mission, right? So here's the deal. There is an execution function to a coordinator. So you're going to see in a minute we're talking about like who's in charge of kids table volunteers, who's in charge of playroom volunteers, who's in charge of interfaith kitchen volunteers, okay? Those people are executing something, running kids table, running playroom, running interfaith kitchen. At the same time, they've got a key team that they identify that they're saying, how can I help them connect more to the family of Wellspring and live their life on mission? Okay? So a leadership role at Wellspring involves executing the mission at every level, advancing the mission of Wellspring at every level. So those are coordinators. They're dealing with members, volunteers to execute something specific. Leaders, so the people who lead coordinators, are helping to shape the culture of the faith family. So they're shaping culture by equipping the coordinators to lead a bivocational lifestyle. So this is the model of leadership we want to pursue, and it's the model that I'm pursuing in my own life, which is, hey, we all have a job, and we all serve the church. Okay? So it's not like I have a sacred life and a secular life. It's actually like I have one life that consists of both things. This takes intentionality. It takes prayer. It takes like working at it. Okay? So hopefully we're putting people in place to help folks balance that. How do you live one cohesive life that involves your call to ministry and your call to provide for your family or care for your family? Okay? So the leaders are shaping the culture of the faith by equipping coordinators to live a bivocational lifestyle and stewarding the mission of the church that she, the church, might be all that God has envisioned for her, the church. So they are shaping the culture of the faith family by saying, hey, are we still on track to live this mission that God has called us to? Give people a place to call home, empower people to live a life on mission. Okay? Any questions about that so far? Any questions about that? Does that make sense? It's pretty straightforward. Oh, and then the last one is pastors. So this is the job that Aaron and I have. At some point, maybe there's other people at this doing this too, but right now it's us. We shepherd the faith family by casting vision and proclaiming truth. So saying, hey, this is who we're called to be, and that means this is where God is taking us. Okay? And we structure the leadership to fit the mission that God has given us. So we are in charge of making sure that we don't get too heavy on the welcome home side or too heavy on the life on mission side, but we're maintaining balance toward being the people that we're called to be. We also do anything else, okay, other that comes up, as you'll see in a minute. Straightforward, huh? Pretty cool? Thoughts? Things that are weird? Okay. So now I'll introduce some people, and I'll stretch it out to make sure Eric can get back. And first, so here, and right now, here's what I want to say. Basically, what I did was say, okay, at some point, we just got to do this thing. And so at that point, I said, who do we got in place? My thought is our year runs from July to June. So July 1st of 2018, we start another year. Essentially, this leadership team will be like a board for us, okay? We have a board of directors that's over our network of churches. So like our 501c3 board, our governing board, Eric is on that board, operates over the 4 churches and school that we're connected to. This will be like our local board, but they have those responsibilities that I talked about a minute ago. Everybody on this team. So I imagine we'll add to that team, and there will be a rotation. So people won't sit in a role forever, but like every 2 or 3 years we'll rotate. And that means what will probably happen is we'll add like 3 or 4 people coming up in July as we go, oh, we didn't think about this area that needs a coordinator, and we've got this person who's called to leadership. So we don't want to just go, oh, we've got an empty slot, slide somebody in there, right? And we don't just want to go, oh, we've got this person that's great, let's make up a position for them. What we want to say is like, what are we doing? What needs leadership? And who's called to leadership? Okay? So those two things have to be right. But probably this list I'm about to share with you will grow in July. So if you see something missing, let's talk about it, right? Okay. So the welcome home coordinators, people who are over things that create a place to call home. Okay. Pamela Sadlon's handling Kids Table that will actually launch, will be every week starting the Sunday after Ash Wednesday. So February 18th is the Sunday. Starting February 18th, Kids Table every Sunday. Okay. Hospitality is Louise. So she coordinates the people who clean and come early to make coffee and set things up and everything. That's been a godsend for Aaron and I. To know that there are people coming at 9 o'clock-ish every Sunday is huge. And that the place is getting cleaned. That's great. Erin Boyd is our worship coordinator. So she's doing that. Okay? Yeah, also a blessing to us. Okay? But different kind than the cleaning thing. And then we have volunteers who are active in the playroom and on the computer for Sunday. And I imagine we'll fill those slots with coordinators in that next cycle that I'm talking about. Okay? Right now, I'm kind of in charge of those, which is why sometimes computer is a little slapped together. But on this week, I'm going to send an email to people on a rotation. Okay? So right now, I'm basically functioning as the coordinator for those two areas, for playroom and computer. But those are welcome home functions. Okay? Then Life on Mission coordinators are Stephanie is over Interfaith Kitchen. So these are functions that how are we getting people mobilized into Life on Mission? How are we giving them opportunities to serve and impact the community? So Stephanie is over Interfaith Kitchen. Casey is like our Young Life liaison. So if you want to know what it takes to get involved in Young Life, you can talk to Casey and she may talk to you. And then Aaron and Jamie are going to start handling our movie nights, the Underwoods. So maybe even bring a little bit of different programming, make it a little more fun and engaging. We're talking with the city about doing them a little more frequently and kind of make it a thing a little more than just like a movie. Okay? And there's a couple things there that I'd like to see us do in the coming year that I just didn't think, we don't need to talk about them yet. But there will be some other opportunities to get out into the community. If you know of any that you think we should really have somebody focused on, let me know. Any questions, comments, concerns about that? Cool. Stretch it out. Okay. We're good. It's okay. All right. So then, welcome home leaders. So now I want to talk about so we've got people who are coordinators, who are coordinating volunteers, and we're trying to create opportunities for those people to grow into a bivocational lifestyle. And then also, we want people at a leader level who are going to shape the culture and continue to help us become who God has called us to be. And these are people who have felt a call to help do church the way God's called us to do it here, who have yes. And I think, and for each of these pairs of people, I talk to them ahead of time to say, do you feel like God's calling you to this? Is this something you're interested in? This is what I'm talking about. You'll start to see these people serving. My goal is that moving forward, I'm not doing much welcoming or announcements on Sunday morning or prayers or anything. That these people are doing that so they can begin to help shape the culture of the church. So the first are our welcome home leaders. So that's Dan and Kathy Howe, okay? And when Dan and Kathy first started coming around, Dan would sit and listen to the sermon, and he would make these scrunched up faces. And I would go to him afterwards, I'd say, oh my gosh, Dan, did I say something wrong? Because usually when someone scrunches up their face like this, you think they're going, that's not right? But he's like, no, I'm just soaking it in, right? And they came when we didn't have any music on Sunday morning. And so when they started coming consistently during that time, I was like, wow, they must like something about us, right? So most people like music on Sunday, and we didn't have it at that time. As I've gotten to know them, I've realized that Dan and Kathy have raised two daughters who are fine, upstanding young women, right? Which is not a small feat, right? And Dan's saying he had nothing to do with it. Mostly it was Kathy. I have learned that they have been in various churches around the country in their time together, and that everywhere they go, they find a way to serve. And that they have an understanding and a depth of knowledge about what it means to make people a part of a family in a church that, like, Aaron and I have never seen before. So what I'm really excited about Dan and Kathy is that they bring a perspective and an awareness of what it takes to be church that we haven't had on our leadership before. And so I'm really excited to welcome them as our welcome home leaders. So give them a round of applause. Hey. So you guys can come up and say something. So you guys can both come up. Even if you don't want to talk, you can just come up. There you go, you're on.
All right. So, he asked.
Kathy, you're out of
he
shot.
gave us a little. Oh, we shouldn't stand in front of the sign, I guess.
No, you're good. The sign's fine.
Okay.
If you're beyond it, you're out
So
of
he gave
shot.
us a little something to think about, what we might like to say. First of all, what we like about Wellspring. And so this has been a year and a quarter, year and a half that we've been coming here. And so, so here's the surprise. You read something in Scripture, you hear something in the sermon, and suddenly you realize that it's all fitting together, right? It's the way it's supposed to be, and it feels good, and it feels wholesome, and it feels true. So when I was preparing for this study that we're doing now about Thessalonians, and I realized that Paul is telling the Thessalonians the best way to make sure that the gospel becomes embedded in the hearts of the people that you're called to serve is to share your life with them. And as I was, preparing that message, I had this aha moment, because I remember then Aaron telling the story about someone that met her at the store who recognized her as being part of the group that served in the interfaith kitchen. And it's the same kind of comment that we got when we talked to folks at the Elf in the Park, that they're saying, this is what we do every year now. We look forward to this. We were waiting for the signs. And it occurred to me that we're doing things the right way, because it's sort of all falling into place. So I also noticed and shared with Jacob that in the past some months I felt, and you've heard me say this before, the Spirit of God here growing deeper and sweeter as we continue to grow. And Jacob and I began to talk about what it meant to protect that and to nurture that feeling, that culture, that spirit that drives us to life on mission as we continue to grow. As that process was occurring, I also began to hear a very distinct call to ministry. So I think most of you know that I'm been accepted into the SMP program, and I'll be starting that soon. So my life of bivocation is going to be different now, because I'll be serving a vicarage here for some time. And we've done, Kathy and I have both done everything one could do in different churches that we've been over the years, and had a ball. All of our friendships, our whole life story is deeply embedded with the people and the places that we called our church home, and we celebrated births and more, and grieved over deaths, and all of our memories and all of our friendships all come from the churches that we served over the years in Iowa and Texas and Tampa and here now in DeBerry area. So we're just delighted and thrilled and humbled and blessed to be called to this type of ministry. One of the things that I like the best, and one of the things that I hope to play a more significant role in the future, is leading prayer and helping everyone to become better at leading prayer, because it's such a blessing to go to any kind of meeting or any kind of gathering and to be called upon to lead prayer. And so that's one of the things that I like the best, and every other aspect of ministry as well. You want to say anything? No. All right.
For the most part, yeah. I think for me, one of the things that probably has kept our marriage together is having churches to call home. Because I left when he took a job in Baltimore. We were married in Iowa, which is where I spent my whole life to that time. He took a job in Baltimore. We were in Baltimore for only a year, and he comes home and says, "Hey, they're moving the company to Fort Worth." I had 2 kids under 2 at the time. Didn't know anybody in Fort Worth. Had a great support system at the little church that we went to there outside of Baltimore. Found a great support system at the church that we ended up in the Fort Worth area. Then he took a job with a company that we knew was moving to Florida, which was a little bit exciting because his parents and how many sisters?
30 or 40.
Yeah. He has 6 sisters. Lived in Florida and found a great church home in the Tampa area too. So all those, change is hard, whatever change it is, whether it's leaving home and going to college, whether it's graduating from college and starting your adulting, whether it's marriage, children, whatever, change is hard. And it's harder for some people than others. And if you're very close to the people that you're having to leave for whatever reason, it's even tougher. So unless you have a new place, find a new place to call home, it's going to be harder yet. And we have been greatly blessed by finding places to call home and to keep me sane.
Great. Great. So that's Dan and Kathy. They are welcome home leaders. So like I said, we also will have leaders who will help to make sure that the church is staying true to its mission to empower people to live life on mission. And so our life on mission leaders will be Aaron and Jamie Underwood, and also stories about them. I met Aaron and Jamie through working with Young Life, and Aaron and I worked on a mini golf tournament together, and so rode in his large truck a lot. And we were talking about different books we had read and thoughts we had about different authors. And I think early on in our time on the board, Aaron and I have slightly different personalities, so I was not sure we would get along, okay? But then we were able to pull off this event together, and I really enjoyed it, and then we were trying to get to know each other better. And so Aaron was like, "Hey, I'm going to run errands. Why don't you just ride around with me while we run errands?" I was like, "Oh, perfect," right? Because very few people feel that unself-conscious. They're like, "Just come do my business with me, and we'll talk," right? And so it's great to have people like that in your life, and Jamie is the same. Jamie and I did not hang out as much as Aaron and I, but the one thing I like about Jamie is she always has great hair, and she's always ready to like laugh and bring life to the situation and make sure everybody's feeling comfortable, right? And I think that comes from Aaron and Jamie's history in ministry. Aaron was on staff and Jamie was on staff with Young Life at a different point in her life. But they were on staff with Young Life for 10 years.
Yeah, between two of us, from 95 to 2013.
Okay, so more than 10 years. I can't do that math right now. All right, but 23 years or something? All right, a long time. So they were on staff with Young Life for a long time, which if you know anything about Young Life, you know that it's a very relational ministry. And so they've had to explore what does it mean to make our whole life about living on mission. And Aaron and I have done international missions, but Aaron and Jamie have seen more of what it means to be missionaries in America with your whole life. They've seen more of that than we've ever seen. And so again, I'm happy for what they bring to our leadership team because they bring an awareness of what it means to be missionaries in your everyday life. And so they're going to bring that to our team to make sure it's embedded in the culture of our church. So give them a round of applause. And now you guys can come talk about Wellspring or yourselves or whatever.
He's a free spirit, right?
You answer the questions I put in the email ahead of time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did I get that email? email. I'm the free spirit, so she may answer the questions in the email.
Why do we love the church?
Yeah.
Oh, it's an interview.
Yeah.
Tell us,
Yeah.
why do you love this church?
Okay. This is not fair. We appreciate that. Well, really, you know, I heard about the table at the time through Jason and Casey, who are on Young Life staff, who said, hey, I was like, you know, where are you going to church? Now you're in town. Through a friend or somebody, they knew about this place called The Table. I was like, The Table? Awesome. Is that a church? What is that? And, you know, and we were at another church at the time, but over a period of time and getting to know, what's your name? Jacob. Jacob, through the board at Young Life, that kind of thing, and having that little bit of ride around time, I got to see the vision for missions of the church, and that it wasn't about the programs within the church as much as we could do outside the walls of the church. And having that background in that type of ministry, that really piqued my interest in checking it out. And so it was actually Easter Sunday last year was our first time here. So what about you?
Yep.
You don't, is that, and she follows me.
Whatever you say, honey.
Yeah. Great. And there was another question in the email. Yeah. So, yeah.
What are you
So,
excited about moving going forward?
right. So, I'm really excited about the outreach. That's what we thrive on, getting to know new people, building relationships within the church. I love getting to know people within the walls of the church as well, because I think that's where we're going to be able to develop the leadership in order to go out and reach more. This is a sweet little place we have here. It really is. So many more people need to know about it, and not just because of us, but because of the spirit within us that's driving us. And I think it's so evident with the people that are in this room right now especially. I love that. I love the fact that we're going to be able to walk together outside these walls and be that kind of, we're just going to have that relationship. I'll give you an example. Corey and I would go to the high school for Young Life. And if you've never been on a high school campus, to go walk up to a teenager that you don't know and start a conversation, a little awkward, okay? But we had a relationship that was so sweet, it was evident to the kids around us, which made us attractive to them, you know? It was the spirit of Christ within us, the love for each other. Another guy I used to go on campus with was Kel, same thing. Dave Joseph, same thing. Some of my other female leaders, same thing. They could tell when we got there was something different about us. That's the same thing we want to bring here, is be able to walk with you guys in those sweet relationships, and that's just so attractive to the people that are outside, you know? So when we're doing movie night in the park, that's something we're excited about, being able to, did you talk about that while I was gone? Okay, thank you. Sorry, my daughter had to go to Young Life, so I had to take her and then come back quick. That's something that's going to be so sweet to be able to walk with you guys to the movie night in the park. And our relationships with each other, that time we've spent with each other, kind of putting that time in to build our relationships, that's going to be evident to the people around us. And they're going to be like, that seems pretty attractive. Because there's so many people that don't have those types of relationships, that sweetness. So that's what I'm really excited about. So, perfect. Good. Oh, yeah.
So I don't have much. Obviously, I do follow him wherever he goes. He makes great decisions most of the time. And he does have that sense of knowledge of where we should be. We have a background that is not Lutheran background. I walked in here and for the first month, I did not even know that this was a Lutheran-based church. It just seemed Christ-based, Bible-based, and that's what excites us. So with our hodgepodge of denominations, none of that seems to matter here, which excites me. We've been in this community for 11-ish years now, and it feels like home. And so now to have a church that feels like home makes it double awesome to me. And I'm just excited that we as a couple and our girls as a family are able to get plugged in. We, like they said, we've done missions for so long, and I've never counted it as missions. It just has seemed a part of our life and what we do. So we're not missionaries. It's just who we are. And we have taken a little break with that, with our business. And I feel like we're doing that every day there in a different sense. But now to tell people in our business even where we come to church is exciting to me. And now that we can just share who we are and this passion with the people of DeLand and surrounding areas is exciting to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thanks.